All right, and I am pumped to be joined as we are every single Saturday here by the Hall of Famer John Smoltz. John, how are we doing this week?
We're doing good. We're doing good and getting closer to the end.
Absolutely. And speaking of the end, let's get right into it. I was talking the other day on the last show about the Astros and the direction that they go in with their playoff rotation, and specifically with my brother. If if you're the Astros, John, Justin hasn't had too many starts since he's come back from the IL. 5 starts. He's thrown 17 and two-thirds innings and given up 19 runs. It hasn't been great. Now there's still 2.5, 3 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks left of the season, so he'll get a couple more starts in. But John, my question to you is if you're the Houston Astros and you have a guy like Justin Verlander on your team that is now healthy but not pitching at his best, where is your mind at with the playoff rotation when you have Framber, Hunter Brown, Yusei Kikuchi, Ronel Blanco? What do you do with Justin, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think there's a couple starts are going to be crucial to see if he can click back in. Look, I've always bet on a guy who'd been there, done that. If you give him enough chances to figure out the injury aspect, because that's the biggest difference. Something is not allowing him to either finish the pitches or get to where he wants to because of the injuries. So I think the next couple starts are going to be crucial. I could see a scenario where, they've got him in reserve in the bullpen and use that arm. But I would still bet on a man that knows how to pitch. If he physically figures it out, then I don't have any problems trusting him in a big moment.
Has it ever happened? Has a situation like this ever happened to you where you got later in your career? Maybe we're on the cusp of not making a playoff rotation or coming in and out of the pen because of an injury. I was just wondering, when I was thinking about what I wanted to talk to you about this week, it just got me to thinking like it's a fairly rare scenario where you have a veteran pitcher that's going to be a Hall of Famer that dealt with injuries, and the timing of coming back is just a little awkward. Like he's going through his spring training essentially right now while also trying to make the playoff roster. Did anything like this ever come up for you?
Yeah, at the end of my career when I finished with St. Louis, they wanted me after I got released by Boston to pitch out of the pen, and I said, just give me a couple starts and I'd be more than happy to pitch out of the pen. Well, I pitched so well in those starts, and then it came down to decision time with their current starters and me pitching in Game 3 or coming out of the pen. They decided to pitch me out of the pen, and it was one of those foaming at the mouth. I wanted to start so bad, but I understood
Yeah,
where I was at that point in my career. And we ended up losing, that series. But I think that's the closest thing where they had to go with. I kind of understood why they went with their guy, even though the resume that I had in the postseason was pretty good, but a
pretty
little
good.
far
Yeah.
removed. So I think if they had to do it all over again, maybe there might be a different decision. But that's hindsight 2020. And I think for where I was in my career, no matter how much success I had in the postseason, I was still coming back from something pretty significant in that shoulder. And I think at the end of the day, I got to pitch in a postseason game, which ended up being ironically my last game ever.
Wow.
So all those years of postseason, I got a chance to taste it one more time, and I think there's something different that would click in Justin, that clicked in me. When you get to that level, if you have that adrenaline left in your body, if you're physically able to do certain things, it will click back in at the right moment. But I understand the dilemma. By no means it'll be a tough decision, especially if nothing changes in the next two starts.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, pretty good is one way to put your postseason career, John. I would say it's one of the best of all time for sure. Speaking of the postseason, we're close, couple weeks away at this point. October is around the corner, and if I were to just ask you a blanket statement as we're heading in, and you just kind of step back and really just use your brain and what you're thinking currently, what team do you think, as we currently sit, is best positioned to win the World Series as we head into October?
I mean, there's so many different tentacles to that question. I would say because there are so many unknown factors in the injury department, I'm going
Yeah.
to start in the Nat. I'm going to start in the American League. I'm going to just simply answer that question to who is the most feared in the American League. And that is going to be, for me, the Guardians. The Guardians, to me, are the most complete bullpen. They have the end of the rotation that is definitely the most feared. Their starting rotation may not be as complete, but they do everything else well. I would not want to play the Cleveland Guardians if I was a team in the American League. In the National League, I still maintain the most complete team is still the Philadelphia Phillies as we
Yep.
stand right now, because the Dodgers have too many questions in their rotation, too many injuries. They have a great lineup, but I think because of that, now a scary team again would be the Milwaukee Brewers, not wanting to play a team that has many facets of way to beat you, and probably the expectations not that they're going to go deep, you know, based
Yeah.
on their personnel. So I think there's two scary teams that you don't want to play, and the San Diego Padres you could throw in that mix as well because of their bullpen. It is outstanding, and they have assembled an opportunity now to not only be relevant but make deep runs. So I look at the teams with the best bullpen right now as the teams that are going to be the most feared and the teams that are hard to get through. If you never have to face a deficit, then obviously you're gonna beat that team.
So let me ask you, if we were able to put together a hypothetical matchup and tomorrow a 5-game series started between the Houston Astros and the Cleveland Guardians, you personally would postseason series. So you have the
Yeah,
Astros postseason experience against this Guardians team that obviously has the bullpen they do and that you just spoke very highly about. You're taking the Cleveland Guardians in that series.
I'm not necessarily taking the Cleveland Guardians. I'm just saying they're the most scary. The Houston Astros better be on their game. Offensively, they can't afford to disappear.
Gotcha.
And at times they've disappeared. I still think the Houston Astros are the team to beat, but the scariest team is the Guardians. If that matchup started right away, Houston better be on their game because they're
Gotcha.
playing a 6 inning game versus everybody else is playing a 7, 8, 9 inning game.
Absolutely. And I'm very much so with you on the National League side of things. I said it before the season started. I still think the Phillies are a team built for October. They are so good. They've shown it over the last few years. And I think this year they've been even better. And I'm excited to watch them in October. John, the last one I wanted to ask you this week is in regards to the Philadelphia Phillies. I recently saw a video where you were discussing a contract that the Phillies offered you. You were still with the Braves, really at the top of your game. You had an unbelievable year and went into the offseason and got offered a contract by the Phillies that was one of the more creative ideas that I've ever seen or heard of in sports. Can you explain the details a little behind that contract that they offered you?
Yeah, it was very tempting to entertain. Now, the mechanics of working it out in the politics, I'm sure they would have found a way to have a membership available for me at Marion and or Pine Valley. That's still what had to have been worked out. But I don't think they would have offered it if they didn't think that was a reality. And honestly, if all things considered were the same, and let's just say Bobby Cox moved on, there's no doubt in my mind I would have thought strongly about going to Philadelphia. That's how creatively impactful that perk was for me. For other people, it would have been the dumbest thing they've ever heard because they don't play golf. But for me, and two of the historically great golf courses in that area, and not to mention the crazy sports town that Philadelphia is, if I were going to leave, there's no doubt in my mind it would have been Philadelphia, even over the New York Yankees. New York at that time was always going to come close to offering the most because that's what they did in the George Steinbrenner days. But it was going to take a very unique situation based on my lifestyle and my family
Yeah.
to change a city like Atlanta and go to New York. But Philadelphia did a great job in their negotiations because if I had antennas, they would have grown off my head real quick. They'd have been like straight up, I'm listening with everything you got to hear.
So how did they contact you directly saying, "Hey, we can get you a membership at Marion or Pine Valley," or did that come through your agent and your agent calls and is like, "Hey, I don't know what you're going to think about this, but here it is."
Yeah, my agent said, they throw something out there. I got to give you everything that's out there. My agent and we always made it known that, I wanted to stay in Atlanta. And I tried very hard to finish my career there. Almost came true if it weren't for an injury. But I'm telling you, that was tough. When they threw out, when he told me, they said, what? I said, Marion and or Pine Valley. I said, all right, if things don't work out here, that's definitely a possibility.
I think the question is, what does and or mean? Is it and or is it or? That's a big part of my decision here.
I tell you what, yeah, it would have been very fun to talk about if I got to a point of really entertaining going to Philadelphia. Atlanta eventually came close to some of the offers that we were putting in. But, I say this all the time. I probably, if I had to go back in time, I handcuffed myself by openly saying I am going to play my entire career in Atlanta. So I made it very difficult to make that a reality. So it cost me in a lot of negotiations, but at the same time, I wouldn't have changed anything.
I know you wanted to stay there and it's ease and you have a family and you wanted to play your whole career there and you said that, but now that it didn't happen and you got to play at a couple other places, are you grateful that you got to play at those places or do you wish it had shooken out where you could stay in Atlanta?
When I knew it wasn't going to work with Atlanta, I was very grateful to have two dynamically different organizations. Listen, I say this with all the utmost respect. Boston was unbelievable. I was not. I was not able to deliver. I would have done things differently in my physical rehab. I wish that was a redo for the Boston sake. But they have invited me to things. I was there like a minute, and they have treated me like I was one of their own. Same thing with the St. Louis Cardinals. I could not pick a better ending and a better organization to end my career that most mirrored the Atlanta Braves. Boston was dynamically different. They had a lot of different personalities. Cardinals were more of that family that I had kind of gotten used to in Atlanta. Adam Wainwright, who I love and was a teammate with, Albert Pujols. It just was a great landing spot if it wasn't going to be the Atlanta Braves. And I am very grateful to have experienced that. Even though my wishes were to stay one year. I grew up watching the Tigers, Alan Trammell, Lou Whitaker, and all those guys that played one time with the Detroit Tigers. I thought that was the greatest thing in the world, and I was close to making that a reality for me.
John, always a lot of fun, man. Always really appreciate it, and we'll do it again next week.
You got it. Look forward to it.
All right, just wanted to thank John Smoltz again for joining us as he does here every single week, which is always really cool to be able to talk to him, pick his brain, and ask him some stories. That story, so the Phillies offered him a contract that also included a membership to Marion or Pine Valley. And if you know John Smoltz, which the entire Flippin' Bats community does, he takes pretty much every interview from or around a golf course and then goes and hits the golf course. And any addition to a contract like that is big for him. So always love hearing him tell stories. I don't know if I would answer that the Cleveland Guardians are the most feared team in the American League, but that's why I love talking to him, because he's a brilliant mind in the game of baseball, and I certainly see where he's coming from. It really does shorten the game. They're a scary team. If they can get a 1-0, 2-1 lead late in a ball game, you are in trouble. So I understand where he's coming from, and just wanted to kind of clarify from him on that. Like if the Astros and Guardians are going up against each other right now, you're taking the Guardians, and he's like, maybe, not taking them, but always a lot of fun talking to John Smoltz. Please make sure you subscribe, follow wherever you listen to your podcast, Apple, Spotify, wherever. We also, you can watch every episode on our YouTube channel, Flippin' Bats Pod, the YouTube channel there. And we're also on all social media, so check us out there at Flippin' Bats Pod for all of them. But really appreciate you all for listening. Until next week, my friends, have a great weekend. And remember, find your bat and flip it. Peace.